Hey, everybody. Thanks for tuning in today to our Real Talk podcast.
She has her clinical practice. Is it a clinical practice? Is that what you call it? A clinical practice here located in Terre Haute, Indiana. So thank you, Tammy, for being with us. If you want to share a little bit about yourself and how you got to the state of certified professional life coach. How did that come about?
God got a hold of me a few years ago. And prior to that, there'd been a feeling, you know how you get that little small voice feeling that there was something else that I needed to be doing. And I was just too busy to even think about doing something else. And so God got my attention. And through going through figuring out physical things, it was there. It was definitely there. So you get through the medical part, and I thought, that's cool. I'll deal with it at some point, right? And God just is such a great person to get your attention. And so I put it off and I put it off, and I wasn't sure what it was. And so in a 4-week period, I had 4 humans, 2 of them I had never laid eyes on before, that said life coaching to me. And by the 4th one, I thought, well, okay, time to look into this. So at that point, I'm a researcher. So I found out that there are programs that do everything from, and God bless everybody, but like you can be certified to ordained to do a marriage just by filling out some paperwork. There's that. And then there are Mac Daddy classes, right, that you have to get into. So if I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it the right way. So I found the course. It was an international program that I wanted to investigate, and tried to register, and it kicked me out every time. So I am old school. I called. It's a funny thing called picking up a phone, and I thought that I could take care of all things the way we do by picking up a phone. And I got a lovely, whom I assume was a young lady on the phone, that explained to me, like you would to maybe a 3-year-old when they just didn't understand, that if you couldn't register, it's because it's a 2-year waiting period. And that's what they're looking at. And I said, well, thank you so much, but did you understand that I really would like to do this? And she was very lovely with me, but very pointed in her, yes, I understood. 2-year waiting list. Look into that. So I hung up. And I thought, okay, God, I got you. You asked me. I did it. We're good. We're good now, right? Except we weren't. And a couple of weeks go by, and it's right there, and I can't get it out of my head. And I'm like, cool, I'll try again. Is this what you need? No problem. So I called back and to the company, and I got the same lovely, whom I assume is a young lady, who explained to me again in a little less patience this time that it was a 2-year waiting period, and that if I needed to do this, probably needed to register today for those 2 years. So I got off the phone and I thought, God, I tried, right? Like, how many times have we said we've tried on something? And decided that I was a genius, and I tried, and we were good, and I was going on to something else, but God. And so it was there, and it was there. And so another week or so went by, and I thought, oh my goodness, like, I get this. So I tried again, fully expecting whom in my head I named Cynthia and that was not her real name, but I name people. In my mind, Cynthia was going to let me have it. And I was really kind of standing up straight that day when I made that phone call, because I thought, oh, this is not going to be good. Cynthia did not answer the phone. A young male gentleman answered the phone. I explained my story as quickly as possible, and he said, well, I don't usually answer this phone. I am the assistant for the head of this company, and this is not my job to answer the phone, but may I look into it for you? And I said, sure, which was way farther than I'd ever gotten before.
With Cynthia,
who probably is telling stories about me to this day, right? Look, I had this chick that just wouldn't take no for an answer, which is all fair, just so we're all clear. And he said he would look into it for me, and if he could do anything, he would let me know. And I said, cool. And at that point, I said, all right, God, you and me, we're good, right? Like, I've done it all. Nothing's going to come of it. We're good. So in another lifetime, I have done 9 shows for Walt Disney, both in California and Florida. So this was on a Tuesday. On Friday, my phone lit up with Anaheim, and I thought, well, it's been a minute since the mouse and I've talked. So, I did know that the company had a base in Anaheim that I was trying to reach. So I picked up the phone. It was the lovely young man, and he said, "You're not going to believe this. We never do this." But the owner of the company, who has powers to override different classes, has agreed to do that. And I believe the one you originally wanted was the one that starts on Monday. And I
Oh,
said,
boy.
yes.
Wow.
And he said, well, we'll get you in that. We never do this, but just for whatever reason, this is working out. And I thought, well, I know why it's
You're
working
like,
out.
it's God.
Right. Thank you so much. So, few tears. Then the weekend set in, and it had been a minute since I had done classes. More than a minute, a really long minute. And I had the weekend to be scared and thought, I don't know that I can do this. What a joke, right? Like, this is not going to be for me, and I'm going to hate it and all the things. Classes began on that Monday morning, and within before the first break, I knew it was for me. I loved it. And so it went on for a long time, and it went on for weeks, and it was all online. And there were things that you attended classes. You also had homework to do and all of the things, and you're juggling life and you're doing it all. And instead of being a chore, which is what I truly thought it would be, it was amazing. So fast forward, I finished that program and thought, I was little Jack Horner, and I was a wonderful guy. I'd gotten the thumb out of the pie, and thought I'm done. Right, that was great, except God. And so prior to all of this, one of the humans that I had spoken with had talked about a new course, which was life coaching from a biblical perspective. And may I just tell you, ladies, I was tired. Like, can I just tell you that tired that you think I just can't do one more thing? And I thought, I don't need that. I had the Mac Daddy course. I'm good. We're going to be just fine. But God, and he was in my head again. And this time it was super easy, because my thing, everybody's got a thing, I think. My thing is I never lie. And so the only thing that came in my mind was, you gave your word. You told that gentleman you would take that course. And I thought, well, I can't, what excuse can you come up with that? So when I started that course, then about a week later, within the very first beginning of that, I knew that I needed to be there, because while the secular program is lovely and explains all of the things, I mean, how can you really do it without God? And how can you really be based to what you want to do with your life without right and wrong? And in a secular world, kind of the thought process is you do you, right? And you do you, and I'll do me, and we're all going to just end up just fine. But from a biblical perspective, there's a right and there's a wrong.
Yeah.
And so thinking about worldview and thinking about where mind was, it put me in a place of, now I'm really home. So that's how I got into this.
Wow. And it felt right.
It's funny. I'm a watch person. I can tell you any time of the day, what time it is, how much time I have there before I need to go to the next thing, before I need to go to the next thing. What I learned in coaching is my worst, want to know what I'm really bad at? Losing track of time. I am with another human. I am hearing about their life, and I completely lost track of time. I had to put a clock across from me in the room, because otherwise, Sally bar the door. Like, I'm just like, tell me more. So I know it's the right place for me.
So thank you for that, trajectory to let us know how you got to that place. So now part of our mission through Real Talk is really to provide a platform for people to ask the questions as it pertains to the world of mental health. I think our heart in all of what we do is to empower people to seek the help if they want it. So there's a myriad of ways that you can go about seeking mental health. Yours happens to be life coaching. So if you could explain to the listeners, what is a life coach?
So life coach, I like to call a partner to you. I like to call an advocate, and I like to call someone that will give you no nonsense information. So I have been in counseling. I loved my counselor more than I can begin to tell you. We would go in, we would pray, I would cry. I think he lost money on Kleenex with me. And I would leave and go back again. What I needed was somebody that could give me some actual things to do to make things better for me. And so that's what a life coach does. Now, I like to explain it this way. We all have friends, we all have family, and we all have humans in our lives that we talk to about our problems. And we're supposed to, and that's a great thing, and that's an amazing outlet. However, all of those people have sweat equity in us. So what they say back to us is one of three things. One is either, I'm going to be your cheerleader. And so no matter what you've said to me, you're right. They're terrible. They're horrible. You go, right? Which sometimes is a good thing for us. We like that position. The opposite position is, you're crazy. There's no reason for you to feel the way you feel, which negates us, right? Like that puts us on our heels. And I'm sorry, you can't tell me how I feel. Or the third area is, with that sweat equity in us, they've got a way that they want you to finish predestined. So they're friends with you and they're friends with the other person, and they want this to be resolved in the way that makes sense for them. So all of those are lovely, but all of those aren't really getting to the root of what the problem is, right? Some of those are Band-Aid situations. You walk away from the first one feeling empowered, but it's not going to change the fact that when you're with that person the next time, there's going to be a problem. The other way, if they've negated your feelings, you're not going to feel empowered to fix it. And if you've been told that none of it makes sense, you're not going to be able to go forward anyway. So I'm the person that listens. I ask a lot of questions. I love asking questions. And let's get to some logical, actual, what are the issues, right? Because if there's a problem, there's an actual issue. And what that issue is and how it feels to you is how we need to look at how we can do it better. And so that life coach becomes that Jiminy Cricket. I had to explain to somebody lately who a Jiminy Cricket was. Jiminy Cricket was Pinocchio's conscience, and he was able to kind of give him that raw information. I'm kind of your Jiminy Cricket. I've always respectfully, but let me hear what's actually going on. And then when you finish, I'm going to give you one or two pieces of what I call homework. Let's try to fix it. Right? Because if we just talk about it, we can talk about it forever. But if we don't actually have some ways to make it better, then it's not going to help you either. So that life coach is that logical person to be able to say to you, what is the problem? How is it affecting you? How is it affecting the other person? Because that matters also in the scheme of things. And how can we fix it? That's a life coach.
So if someone came to you, just for an example, because, I think people hear life coach and they think like it's hokey. You know what I mean?
100%.
Like that, they just associate that with that.
100%.
So if someone came to you and said, hey, I'm a 32-year-old woman. I have a male best friend and my husband is jealous. And like, what sort of things would you work through with that person?
So the questions become, what is that man providing in your world that your husband is not, right? Because that becomes the first question.
Yeah.
Stop. Ouch. That's a hard question.
I know, I'm like, but this hypothetical situation, I'm like, oh, we're going to get some knowledge.
Yeah. But it is like, and that truly may not be the first question out of my mouth, but we're going to get there.
Yeah.
I mean, can I just tell you we're going to get there?
Yeah.
Because generally in a coaching situation, as we've talked, that first time is kind of vetting me, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so what they generally tend to do is give me some pebbles, right? Oh, this is kind of a pebble in my shoe and it kind of bothers me. And to see what my reaction is to that. The second time they come in, and I've given some ways to work on that pebble. So they come back in and they say, ooh, pebble doesn't hurt so much. That's cool. Let's talk about a little rock I found. And I say, cool, let's go. By the third time they're in there, they're usually I've built that trust enough to figure out what's really the problem. And then we can get to that, right? And so in this instance, my guess is that's not the first thing out of their mouth. Honestly.
Yeah.
But by the time we get to that, I'm going to find out what that person is providing, because if that person is important, male or female, now in this case it's male, and in this case it's causing a problem in my marriage, right?
Mm-hmm.
But that person's providing something for me. So let's figure out what that is, right? And being able to actually say what that is out loud is really freeing, because they're probably holding that. That's probably something that they don't want to deal with. They just know that when I'm with this person, I feel better. Cool. That's great. And we all want to feel better. So let's figure out how we can do that. And maybe let's figure out how that husband is feeling, because that's going to, if that still matters to you as it should in the relationship, then we've got to factor that in as well.
So let me ask this question, because the response that you gave right now seems like quote unquote counseling to me. It doesn't seem like coaching to me. That's a counseling response. So what's the difference then between a life coach and a counselor? Because that, if I was to hear that, just if I was reading that on a book, on a page, I'd think this person's a counselor. You just, because it was sound counsel. I mean, that's why I said that's a hard punch. I think sometimes people shy away from going to counseling or going to life coaches or things like that because they don't really want to hear the truth. They kind of want to wallow in the issue.
1,000%.
But I don't necessarily know if I want you to come out and punch me in the face with, hey, I've got to ask you the question that I have to ask you. So what is the difference then between a life coach and a counselor?
So when I present, so as I ask these questions to you, it's up to you to figure out how you're going to answer me, right? That's first and foremost. And then what I'm doing in those moments is not telling you you need to, right? Because that would also be the counseling aspect. Mine is going to be, okay, so if you feel that way, and if this is how he makes you feel, talk about how you feel in that moment, talk about how you need more of that. And then is that a conversation that you should be having? Because again, I'm coaching. I'm trying to coach you into a different way of getting what you need. And that's where the coaching comes from, is you're obviously upset over something. Something's obviously not working. You're not coming by just to say hi to me, which would be great, and I would love that, but that's not why you're coming. So you're coming with a problem, and my job in this is to let you see it differently and give you ways to work on that in a different way, right? Because in this fictional scenario, where that brain could go, where my brain goes in that, is I see this woman needing something and this other human providing something that I need in that moment. And so then we've got to figure out what it is in you, because it really isn't about the other human. It's about what you're receiving from them, and then figuring out how you can get what you need. That's the coaching part. Instead of telling you, okay, you need to, I never do that. I never do that. Mine is coaching in, well, have you tried thinking about how this makes you feel? Well, good. Tell me how that makes you feel. And then getting that information to give them what they need to move forward in it.
So it's
Is
really,
that an answer?
Yeah, it does. And,
Yeah.
and I think it's to help those people, because one of the things that we want to be able to do is people listen to these podcasts is if they're facing a situation where they think I might need to go see someone.
Sure.
It's really trying to decide which one of the someones
1,000%.
do I need to go see. And so as they
1,000%.
choose between a therapist, a counselor, a life coach, a psychologist, a psychiatrist, as we delve into that and you explain what your role is, it would our prayer is that it answers those questions for our listeners.
Yeah.
And they think, okay, I think based on all the information that I have, this is probably the road that I'm going to go in. So thank you for that explanation, because it's just for some people this is the norm, and for some people this is so foreign and so scary
100%.
that they have to open up. That's like that scenario is a tough. I mean, that's a vulnerable confession to make to someone that
100%.
I don't know. Can I trust you? I'm getting ready to share something that could possibly impact my marriage, and I need a safe place to work that out. What does that mean? So, yeah.
So let's talk about the trust part, if we may.
Yeah.
So again, I have all sorts of weirdness about me. So that trust component is huge for me, because if you as another human can trust me, for me, that's my Super Bowl and World Series, right? That's huge to me. So the way I handle those things is my clients can tell anybody anything I say. Like, you want to talk about it, you want to put it on social media, you can do anything you want. I won't acknowledge you as a client if I see you out. Now, if you speak, I'm going to say hello to you because I'm all over that. But I think that needs to be really kept very carefully, because what if we've been in this scenario, and what if you've talked about your husband and then you're at the grocery store and I don't want you to see me in panic. So I take it the other way. If you speak to me, I'll always speak. If you don't, then I'm going to let you have that world. I take notes, again, old school. That works for me. I take notes and then I keep them until your next appointment. So that way I've got to be able to say to you, so how did this work? This was your homework. How did this work? And then I shred. because I don't want to keep a whole bunch of things about you. The other thing is, let's talk about Terre Haute. It is the biggest small town in the whole wide world,
It is.
right?
It is.
And so if I don't know you, then somebody knows you that knows me, that knows you, that knows somebody else, right? And so what I have really worked very hard on is I have a first and last name when you come in the door. If that's something I recognize, I make sure that I don't put anything to it, because all I can do is listen to you. If I listen to you with some preconceived information, I'm never going to hear you the same. So that being able to hold your confidence and be able to earn your trust, and I'm all about earning it. No problem. Put me in, coach. I'll earn that trust. And that is when you feel comfortable enough to get to the real thing. There've been many times where I've seen a client in succession, and it's down the road before we get to. I had a client that I knew there were some issues with her self-confidence. And from the outside, it made no sense to me. Made no sense at all. I'm looking at this beautiful woman, kind and lovely. And so I'm not putting together what I'm seeing and what I'm hearing until much later on there had been a childhood trauma. But it took her a while to get to that place. And coaching is like that. But the other thing with coaching is come in with your problem. Let's solve your problem. I don't expect to see you for the next 5 years of your life. That's the other thing with me is once you come in, once we solve your problem, go live your life. If you have another problem and you want to come, that's cool. But it's predicated on problem solving and not just a place to go every week. Now, if you need me, I'm here. I'm not telling you I would turn you down, but I want to solve your problems. I don't want to hold your hand.
Well, and you made a really good point, which was the length of time. I think that's one of the questions that we have is how long does it take to feel better? And I think it's really up to the individual of how much they're willing to show you. So if I come in with multiple wounds, if I show you one wound at a time, that's how long it's going to take me to get better.
1,000%.
Or I come in and strip completely down and I'm like,
Roll
they're
the
here,
boulder in.
right? They're all here. How do we work through that? So I think it's just dependent on the issue and the individual and what they have to go through.
Oh, 1,000%. I had an athlete that came in that had a problem with kind of getting stalled. She wasn't getting better. She wasn't getting worse. She was just stalled. And so that one was super easy. Once I didn't understand her sport, let's just say that. But once she explained her sport, then it was rote for her. She did the same things every time and was getting the same result. Well, that's kind of how that works. So then it became, well, have you tried changing that slightly and changing your stance and changing this and changing that? And it fixed it. So she was a one and done because that was super simple, right? So it depends on what the issue is. If it's a one and done, it's a one and done. You don't have to sign up for a contract with me. Let's fix the problem.
Yeah. So something that you mentioned in what you were talking about earlier is, building that trust and kind of just connecting with that person. If I come in, how do I know if you're a good fit for me? What sort of vetting process is there to build that relationship with your clients?
So I ask all humans that are interested in talking with me to do a 15-minute discovery call. No obligation, no cost. We just talk. Let's talk about where you are and why you chose to give me a call. At that point, like I said, we don't normally get to the bottom of it, but we get to some kind of a general understanding of where we would be starting. And I'm life coaching. So let's talk about life issues. So those are relationships. I will tell you that I will never tell another human I know how you feel, because I think that is a crud statement, because I can't feel the way you feel. But I have some knowledge in life changing. So that's death, that's divorce, that's disease, that's parents or relationship issues, that's children in our lives, that is negotiating families. So those kind of life things, that's kind of my lane. Someone that is maybe dealing with abuse or addictions or those type of things, I really would rather them see a professional higher up the food chain than me, because I think that they need more than what I am comfortable with. But what I think in that vetting process, in that phone call, I've always said humans are very smart. And so I think that in that phone call, when we hang up, you have one of two impressions. I like her. This is easy. I was able to talk to her. Okay, I think she's okay. Or there's the negative, right? I don't think so. Like, she kind of pushed me a little bit, and that's not where I want to be. So I ask that that phone call be your barometer. If it feels like I'm asking too many questions, guess what? I'm going to when I sit across from you as well. So if you've got that feeling of, I don't know, lean into that as well. If you also have the feeling of, no, I'm real comfortable with that. That's funny. I said more things than I even thought I was going to say. That's kind of your sign that this will work pretty well. I also never know how honest you want to be. So you come in and you lob me some crazy ones over here that really has nothing to do with your life, and I'm not getting enough information to help you solve that, then that becomes a deterrent as well. So really thinking about what you need and are you ready to jump on that train, then it becomes easy for you to vet and see whether I'm your person or not.
And I think that that's something, I mean, I've talked to individuals who have sought out counseling, and that concept of vetting is so foreign to them because
I think it's important.
when a doctor just sends you to a specialist, I'm going to send you to a urologist. You don't get to pick the urologist, they just send you. And so I think it's been modeled for us in the medical field so many times that when we have to pick our own specialist, we just don't. We just are like, well, this is the person that I found. And we always try to encourage people, ask the questions, find
100%.
out what, if you're dealing with PTSD, are
100%.
they trained in PTSD specifically, because that's what you're looking for. So
100%.
I love the fact that you're having that conversation and giving the individual the space to determine, are we going to be a good match?
Mhm.
Because some people, like you said, may take them a really long time to warm up and disclose what they're wanting to. And if you come out and you're asking those questions, even though they're for their betterment and it's I'm doing it because it's part of the process, I think it can freak them out so bad that they just are like, I've never said that to
100%.
anybody. These are all intrusive thoughts that I've always had in my head, and I've never said them out loud. And I'm getting ready to allow you to go into that dark space of my mind.
Absolutely.
That has to be both overwhelming and scary.
Yeah.
And a privilege to be able to be invited into that party,
Yeah.
right? And if you think of a life coach as your partner, so instead of thinking of me, if your mental image is, we're going to do this together, it's you and me right here together. I'm not looking down at you. You're not looking up at me. We're going to lock arms and we're going to be in lockstep and we're going to do this together. Then feel if I'm that good fit for you to do that, because I think that is very easy to do in a conversation.
Yeah.
You know what that reminds me of is, I don't know if you've seen, there's several videos, but I saw this video probably a couple years ago, and it made me cry. And it was a blind sprinter, and she was tethered to her guide. And when they took off, I was like, this guy has got to run equally, if it can't run faster than her, because he's relying on her pace, but she's relying on him to maintain and trust that pace. So I don't know where I'm going, but you can see where we're going. So I'm going to trust you to get me across the finish line. And that's what it reminds me of, is when you tether to that, I have to trust that you have my best interest at heart. In the military, there's different trainings that I went through, and one of them, which was probably the most psychological, like heaviest one that I went through, during the whole training, the instructors kept telling us, trust the process. You need to trust the process. It's going to freak you out a little bit and you're going to panic because you're in an uncomfortable space. But in the end, our goal is to peel back the layers to get to you to see what's in there. Trust the process. And that's really what you're saying, is trust the process. But to do that, I have to trust the one that's walking me through the process.
100%. And I view that as a privilege. And I also think it's very smart when another human says, I don't think so, because whatever that voice is telling you, you need to listen to it. And most of the time, if they're ready to open even a tiny bit, I'm good with a tiny bit, right? I don't have to go in with a bulldozer and just mow them down. That's not what I do. It's earn that trust step by step and ask the small questions to get to a little bit bigger question, to get to a little bit bigger question, because that's how you earn that trust. And for me, it's all about the trust. If I can't earn that, then I will never be successful for you. And failure is not an option for me. So I'm going to make sure that I do what you need, because it's never about me, and it's never the same way twice. This is not cookie cutter. And so you may need me to speak in a more softer tone to you, while you may appreciate a more, I'm never yelling, but a more forceful.
Yeah, like a firm voice.
Correct.
Yeah.
So, and it's learning that. You learn that very quickly by working with them. That's how you learn that trust. It's a matter of refocusing on what actually the problem is, because if we're not hitting it with all the different ways to do that, then it's a different problem. Someone that is not a non-believer, we're going to still have the same conversation. I am not going to try to convince them to do anything, but oftentimes if you just open that door, there's some interest.
One of the tagged questions in here was to have you explain pant size logic. So what is that?